If you go to the next slide, thank you. All right, thank you for joining us today for this webinar regarding the fiscal year 2023-24 continued funding application for California State Preschool Program, CSPP, and Pre-Kindergarten and Family Literacy Support, CPKS contractors. This webinar is being presented by the Early Education Division, EED, on Tuesday, November 29th, 2022, from 4 to 5 p.m. Next slide, please. Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. My name is Lindsay Castillo, and I am an analyst with the Contracts and Grants Administration Unit here at the California Department of Education, the CDE, in the EED. Presenting along with myself today is Crystal Devlin, Education Administrator 1 for the Program Quality Implementation North Office of the EED. Mai Zhang, Staff Services Analyst for the PQI Office, will be facilitating the presentation, and responding to your questions in the Q&A section of this webinar is Nikki Niknia, Staff Services Manager 2 in the Administration and Fiscal Services Office, Richard Miller, Consultant in the PQI Office, Jennifer Osalbo, a consultant in the EED Policy Office, Yashima Daniels, a manager in the Early Education and Nutrition Fiscal Services Office, and Carly Nodohara, Education Programs Assistant from the Applied Data Research and Evaluation Office. Please note that the chat feature is disabled during this webinar. Therefore, if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen. Our team will do our best to respond to all questions. Please check the CED EED Frequently Asked Questions webpage after the webinar for FAQ updates. The webinar recording, as well as webinar slides, will be posted to the CDE CFA webpage after the webinar. On this slide is a photo collage of children from Hayward Unified School District. The center of the collage reads, "Everyone belongs, todos somos unidos." Next slide, please. Here we have our agenda for the webinar. Today we will be providing you an overview of Management Bulletin 2206 regarding fiscal year 2023-24, CFA for CSPP and Pre-Kindergarten and Family Literacy Support contractors, including statutory background for the CFA. We will provide you with application updates, including what's new for fiscal year 23-24, and we will discuss how to submit the fiscal year 23-24 CFA. We will then walk through the instructions for completing the CFA and provide you with contact information for any questions or technical issues that may arise when completing and submitting the CFA. Next, we will conduct a brief walkthrough of the electronic CFA to provide an example of what responses should look like. Then, as time allows, we will respond verbally to frequently asked questions that are being posted in the Q&A feature of this webinar and close out for the afternoon. Now over to Crystal to provide an overview of MB 2206 and some instructions for completing and submitting the 23-24 CFA.
Thank you, Lindsay, and welcome everyone who has joined us today. Management Bulletin 22-06 offers our existing CDE EED California State Preschool Program, again the CSPP, and Pre-Kindergarten Family Literacy Support CPKS contractors the opportunity to request continued funding for fiscal year 2023-24. This MB supersedes the CFA information found in Management Bulletin 21-14. In order to be considered for continued funding for fiscal year 2023-24, CSPP and CPKS contractors must complete and submit the fiscal year 2023-24 CFA on or before December 23rd, 2022. The complete fiscal year 2023-24 CFA electronic application and forms are available on the CFA webpage. Mai will drop a link in the chat for you now to the CFA webpage. It is really important for each CSPP and CPKS CPKS contractor as applicable to review this information as soon as possible to ensure appropriate time and resources are reserved to complete and submit your CFA in a timely manner. The CDE administers the CSPP and CPKS programs. The California Department of Social Services, the CDSS, administers all other program types, which became effective July 1, 2021. The information provided in this webinar regarding the continued funding application for fiscal year 2023-24 is for CSPP and CPKS contractors only. The California Code of Regulations, Title V, Section 17726D, requires contractors who intend to accept the offer to continue providing services in the subsequent contract period to respond to a continued funding application request in accordance with the instructions and timelines specified in the request. Management Bulletin 22-06 provides the instructions and timelines applicable to the fiscal year 2023-24 CFA. 5 CCR section 17726E specifies that failure to respond within the timeline specified in the CFA request shall constitute notification to the CDE EED of the contractor's intent to discontinue services at the end of the current contract period. Next slide. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the auto renewal process. CSPP and CPKS contractors who apply for and are approved for continued funding will not need to sign a contract to provide services for fiscal year 2023-24, as CSPP and CPKS contracts approved for continued funding will be automatically renewed in accordance with all applicable federal and state laws, as well as all CSPP and CPKS contract terms and conditions that will be incorporated into the subsequent contract as applicable. By signing the CFA, your agency indicates that it wishes to automatically renew its current CSPP and/or CPKS contract for the next fiscal year and is willing to and does accept all of the terms and conditions of such contract, which will be provided to all CSPP and CPKS contractors being renewed for funding no later than June 1, 2023. Contractors may reject the terms of the new contract by providing written notice to the CDE no later than July 1, 2023. Instructions on how to provide written notice of rejection of the terms of the new contract will be provided with the proposed 2023-24 contract. Now back over to Lindsay to provide an overview of the instructions for completing and submitting the 2023-24 CFA.
Thank you, Crystal. I will now review updates to the CFA for fiscal year 23-24. First, there is now an electronic version of the CFA that is available on the CFA webpage. We will be conducting a brief walkthrough of the electronic application later in this webinar. Second, there is an updated program calendar for fiscal year 23-24. It is an Excel document that we will review later in this webinar. The next update to Section 2, Part 2 of the CFA is in regards to funded enrollment and asks how many children will be enrolled per county. You will see an example of this when we do the walkthrough of the electronic CFA later in the webinar. New this year is pre-kindergarten and family literacy contractors will complete a continued funding application to continue their CPKS contract. Next, if the contractor is proposing a new subcontractor that has not previously been approved, the CDE will be contacting the contractor to request that the required documentation before approval. Finally, if the contractor is a public agency operating a CSPP and choosing to be exempt from licensure pursuant to Health and Safety Code Section 1596.70920, the self-certification for license exempt LEA form must be completed. Next slide, please. Contractors must review the instructions prior to completing the CFA. The CFA may be submitted electronically by email or physically by mail. Download the CFA, including the required attachments, from the CDE CFA webpage, which Mai will put in the chat now. Please save a copy of your CFA for your agency's records. Complete and sign the electronic CFA, including the required attachments. If submitting a physical copy of the application, print all pages single-sided only. The CFA may be signed and submitted to the CDE electronically or in physical copy. Next slide, please. Instructions for submission of the 23-24 CFA. The 23-24 CFA is due to the CDE EED on December 23rd, 2022 by 5 p.m. We strongly encourage that CFAs are submitted electronically. CSPP contractors may submit their application electronically or by printing, signing, and scanning the CFA and all required attachments. Electronic submissions will be submitted online. Email the completed printed application to cfa@cde.ca.gov. Alternately, contractors may submit a hard copy of the CFA with original signatures in blue ink by mail. Hard copies of the CFA must be mailed to Continued Funding Application, California Department of Education, Early Education Division, 1430 N Street, Suite 3410, Sacramento, California, 95814-5901. All CFAs must be received on or before 5 p.m. on Friday, December 23rd, 2022, regardless of the method of the CFA submission. Next slide, please. We will now go through the instructions for each section of the CFA. In section 1, you will provide the contractor information. Include the title of the person completing the CFA and the contact person's email address. For section 2, contract types. For section 2, part 1, check all applicable boxes to indicate the contract and program types contractor intends to administer in fiscal year 23-24. In checking the boxes, the contractor agrees, if approved for continued funding, to continue implementation of the preschool services and family literacy services, if applicable, with funds provided by the CDE. The contract types are as follows: 1, CSPP, 2, CPKS. Please also indicate if the CSPP contractor operates a family child care home education network. The program types are as follows: 1, full day, full year; 2, part day, part year; 3, full day, part year; 4, part day, full year. New this year is a requirement to provide information regarding the contractor's funded enrollment in section 2, part 2. Insert the number of subsidized children funded to be enrolled and the number of counties where CSPP services are administered. The number of children counts will be used to determine and monitor compliance of a contractor's 5% set aside for children with exceptional needs pursuant to California Education Code 8208 C1A and D2AI. If the contractor elects to change these numbers during the course of the fiscal year, contractor must submit a program narrative change and confirm approval from their assigned regional consultant. The new numbers will also be collected during the program self-evaluation survey. In section 3, contractors, officers, and board of directors. If the contractor has a board of directors, complete contact information for each of the current year contractors, officers, and board of directors or governing individuals, including name and title, telephone number, mailing address, and email address. I will now hand it back over to Crystal to walk us through sections 4 through 7 of the CFA.
Thank you, Lindsay. Okay, so now we're going to look at section 4, which is the program narrative section of the continued funding application. Here you will indicate if the contractor does or does not have programmatic or minimum days of operation, MDO, changes for fiscal year 2023-24. For any programmatic or MDO changes, complete and submit the program narrative change form EED 3704A, and ensure the fiscal year 2023-24 program calendar aligns. All contractors must submit the fiscal year 2023-24 program calendar form EED 9730 for each type of CSPP operated, such as full day, full year, full day, part year, and part day, part year. Next slide. Section 5 of the CFA is related to your CSPP personnel certifications, which provides a CDE EED information regarding the CSPP contractor's authorized representative that is completing and submitting the fiscal year 2023-24 CFA. This section must be completed and signed by the contractor's authorized representative. To digitally sign the form for email submission, left-click the signature field and follow the on-screen instructions. Alternatively, the form can be printed, physically signed, and scanned for email submission. If submitting a physical copy of the application, signatures must be signed in blue ink. The authorized representative is the person who has the authority to sign and engage in a contractual relationship with the CDE. Section 6, the subcontractor certification. If the contractor does not have subcontractors, he will check the box indicating that the contractor operates without the use of a subcontractor. If the contractor does have subcontractors that have previously been approved by the CDE EED, check all applicable boxes in this section. Contractors who have been approved to subcontract CSPP services will need to complete and submit Form EED 3704B. This form is available on the CFA webpage. Note that if a subcontractor listed on the CFA has not previously been approved by the CDE EED, the contractor will be contacted by the CDE EED to request the required documentation needed to approve any newly proposed subcontracts. Again, this section must be completed and signed by the contractor's authorized representative as described earlier. Section 7, the CSPP contractor certification. The authorized representative certifies that they are authorized to execute the continued funding application, has supervisory authority over the state preschool program, has actual knowledge of the information in the application, and certifies that the information in the application is true and correct. The authorized representative agrees that by signing the CFA, they are agreeing to renew the contract under the terms and conditions that will be applicable to fiscal year 2023-24, and that such contract will be in effect as of July 1, 2023, unless the contractor submits written notice of rejection of the contract to the CDE prior to the effective date of such contracts. Instructions on how to provide written notice of rejection of the terms of the new fiscal year 2023-24 contract will be provided in the proposed contract that will be sent to each contractor on or before June 1st, 2023. Again, this must be completed and signed by the contractor's authorized representative as previously described. Now, again, back over to Lindsay to provide instructions regarding requirements for contractor updates and certification to the CDMIS.
Thank you, Crystal. In Section 8, certification of information in the Child Development Management Information System, information is provided regarding the requirements for contractors to review and update all information in the CDMIS and certify under penalty of perjury that the information in CDMIS is complete and accurate as of the date of certification. This update includes the name and contact information for the executive director and program directors, location of offices, location, license number, and licensed capacity of facility sites and/or family child care home providers who serve children through a CSPP, FCCHEN, and the number of children enrolled. The information in the CDMIS becomes part of the agency's contract. Complete and accurate information is critical to the function of the CSPP and the maintenance of your agency's CSPP contract. Incomplete or inaccurate information in the CDMIS can result in an audit finding at the state level and a finding of noncompliance for your agency. Maintenance of complete and accurate information in the CDMIS is your responsibility. To access this information, the person logging on to the CDMIS must be a super user. Only super users can access the Update Agency Information function within the CDMIS. To review the information and submit changes, log on to the CDMIS. And Mai can put that in the chat now, the link to CDMIS. From the main menu, select the function Update Agency Information and click the Submit button. Review all of the following information and update as applicable. Add, edit program director information, add, edit family child care home network information, add, edit sites, offices, update the site license information, update the number of children served by contracts at sites or offices to reflect services as of the date of CDMIS updates. Once all of the information has been reviewed and all changes have been submitted, regardless of whether the changes have been approved by the assigned EED PQI office consultant or are still pending approval, complete and sign Section 8 certification of CSPP contractor information in the CDMIS. Additionally, generate and print the agency information certification form. Do not generate the agency information certification form until all the information above has been reviewed and any changes needed have been submitted. To generate this form, scroll to the bottom of the Update Agency Information webpage and click the Generate Certification Form button. When the form is generated, print it using the browser's print function. The CSPP contractor's authorized representative must sign the form. The signed form must be returned with the CFA. Applications will be considered incomplete without either the certification of CSPP contractor information page completed or the agency information certification form. All changes submitted, adds, updates, or deletes will remain pending until the CSPP contractor's assigned EED PQI office consultant reviews and approves or denies the changes. In addition to this annual review of information as part of the CFA process, CSPP contractors are required to submit changes to executive director information, program director information, and site or office information, site name, physical address, and license information only as changes occur. Next slide, please. Section 9 is required attachments. All attachments must be completed and attached to the application as applicable to the contractor. These attachments include fiscal year 23-24 program calendar, EED 9730, payee data record, STD 204 for non-public agencies only, payee data record supplement, STD 205 for non-public agencies only, Secretary of State for non-public agencies only, verification of school district name and address, program narrative change, EED 3704A, subcontractor certification form, EED 3704B, CSPP license exemption self-certification as applicable, California Civil Rights Laws certification, contractor certification clauses, federal certification, agency's board resolution or minutes of meeting reflecting authorization of signature on this document and a delegation of authority if applicable, and that's for public agencies only. Section 10 is the CFA checklist. On the electronic application, please select each box after all the items are uploaded. The items with an asterisk require a signature. Next slide, please. So we are now going to do a walkthrough of the electronic CFA. The electronic version of the CFA is available on the CFA webpage. We will now conduct a brief walkthrough of the electronic CFA. For the purposes of this presentation, sample responses have been pre-generated for the form fields. When completing the application for your agency, include the necessary information for your agency. In some instances, more fields will appear depending on your agency's needs. If you are not able to complete the CFA in one session, you can use the Save feature to save your progress to return to at a later time. So we will switch screens now to go to the electronic CFA. So the first page is an overview and instructions. And then if we, thank you. So here's overview and instructions. And then the next page, we have contractor information. So you'll enter contractor name, doing business as, headquartered county, vendor number, all of the information regarding the contractor. The question is mailing address different from legal business address? If you say yes, this is one field where if you have a different address, different form fields will pop up for you to populate. If fields are entered incorrectly, the CFA, the application itself will not let you move forward. Anytime there is parentheses, yeah, thank you. So if it's not entered correctly, it'll give you a message at the top of the screen. Please provide an answer for this question. And then you will have to edit your response so that it matches what you need before you can proceed. So here we have section 2, contract and program type. Part 1 is contract and program type, where you will choose CSPP or CPKS. And then if you operate a family child care home education network, the program type. And then part 2 is funded enrollment. This is one of the new sections this year. So you'll choose how many counties your agencies operate in, the county. The totals will add up automatically for you in that section. And then at the bottom, you will add up the total number of CSPP children to be enrolled. Section 3 was contractors, officers, and board of directors information. You'll answer yes or no if the contractor has a board of directors. If you say yes, you'll be asked to enter how many officers and governing individuals you have. That number of officers will appear. You'll enter the contact information for each officer. Section 4 is the program narrative. If you have any changes to the program narrative for program or calendar changes, you will note that here. Personnel certification is section 5. You'll add the information for any authorized representatives. Section 6, subcontractor certification. Again, certifying if you have subcontractors, if they have subcontracted before, then you'll sign this page as an authorized representative. Section 7 asks for contractor certification, and it says under penalty of perjury, I certify the following. We are asking you to select each one of those items, certifying that you or indicating that you certify all of the above. Again, you'll type your name and that will count as your signature. Here, there's an opportunity, Section 8, certification of contractor in the CDMIS. This is an opportunity where you might need to go update your information in CDMIS. So you can, this will link to the CDMIS page. Here you could save your responses and come back to this page after you update your information in the CDMIS. We want to make sure that that is updated before you submit your CFA. Make sure that your updated CDMIS information is included as a part of the CFA. So once that is updated, you can proceed. Section 9 is required attachments. So for this page, this is where we have a checklist of items that need to be included with each application. It will depend on your agency if it's public or not. So you will select the forms that are specific to your agency. Once you do that, it says upload the required attachments and select selected above to the application by selecting the attach icon below. So here you're going to be asked to attach a zip file to the application. In order to create a zip file, you need to put all of the documents that you need for this application into a folder. So you'll create a folder, you'll place all of the documents that you need for your CFA in that folder. You will right-click the folder and then hover over where it says send. When it says send to, you'll see an option that says compress. And then that will compress it into what is called a zip file. And then you can title the zip file, CFA supporting documents or something that relates to your CFA application. Once you do that, you can choose the file. It will upload to your application. Then you can click next. Now, it'll ask you to print a copy of your completed CFA for your records before submitting. So when you click the print responses button, you will be able to see all of your responses in one long document rather than the application is broken up into smaller documents. You'll have one long document with all of your responses, so you're able to save your copy for your own records. And then we can go back to the page. Once you click submit, an auto-generated email will go to the email addresses provided in the application. There is one more additional step. Once you click submit, you'll be redirected to the continued funding application webpage. We'll also ask that you check your email or the email of whoever was listed as the contact person. There is an additional step just requiring you to email the CFA inbox. It's cfa@cde.ca.gov, indicating that your application is complete. So now we can return to our slideshow. And now we will do a quick review of our updated program calendar. So that is another one of our updates to the CFA this year. So we'll pull it up in just a moment to show you. So here is the updated program calendar. It's an Excel document. This is the cover page that you're seeing right now. There's fiscal year 23-24 program calendar. There are instructions, and where it says contractor information, that's where you'll enter the information, the name of the CSPP contractor, vendor number, county, and contract type. Where it says subtotals, this is all going to be automatically calculated based on the numbers that you put in for each month. So each month is represented by a different tab. So we'll look at July 2023. And this is where you'll enter your days of operation. So enter 1 if yes, enter 0 if no. And again, down at the bottom, the total will automatically add up for you, and that will populate the cover page as well. So you're just putting a 1 if there is a day of operation, and then those totals will show up on the cover page. And you'll do that for each month of fiscal year 23-24. Thank you, and we can go back to our slideshow now. All right, so submit questions regarding the application process to the CFA team by email at cfa@cde.ca.gov. Include your name and phone number on all inquiries. For programmatic questions regarding the CFA, contact your assigned EED PQI Office Regional Consultant. The EED PQI Office Regional Consultant directory can be accessed online, and Mai can put that link in the chat. Excuse me. And for any fiscal related questions regarding the CFA, contact your assigned EENFS Apportionment Analyst. The Fiscal Apportionment Analyst directory can be accessed online, and Mai can put that link in the chat as well. Please be sure to select the Fiscal Apportionment Analyst for the CDE, as this directory includes contact information for both the CDE and California Department of Social Services Fiscal Apportionment Analysts. Next slide, please. All right, so now we will respond to some of the most frequently asked questions we have been receiving throughout this presentation, and I will turn it over to Crystal to tackle some of those questions.
Thank you, Lindsay. So one of the questions that I see coming up quite a bit in the Q&A is related to board approval and not being able to get that board approval by the due date for the CFA. So what we can say about that is that we will approve extensions on a case-by-case basis. So you would submit an email or send an email to our CFA team at cfa@cde.ca.gov and let them know that you're requesting an extension, the reason for the request, and the date that you would be submitting the continued funding application. Again, this will be on a case-by-case basis. So please ensure that it, for the most part, would relate to not being able to get the CFA on the board agenda in time. And then I'm looking through here to see what other questions. And if you see any questions, Lindsay or Mai, that you think we should answer live, please go ahead and read those out loud to me. I did also see questions regarding who is the authorized agency representative that can sign the continued funding application. So that would be either the executive director or program director that is listed in CDMIS. So we need to make sure that that one of those people are the signer. And then also, there were questions around if you have both part day and part year and full day, full year CSPP, do you need to submit 2 calendars? And yes, please do submit a calendar for each of those. I'm still looking. I see a question here, and I believe Nikki is on, or Lindsay may be able to answer this, asking if you can bypass the signatures and sign all documents in the end. So I'm not sure if that's something you can answer. Or if you need more clarification. Sure.
Hi, Crystal, this is Nikki.
Hi.
This is in regards to the electronic application, I believe. And if so, all fields are required to pass through the application. So a signature would be required.
Thank you, Nikki. And then I see another question asking if the signature can be a DocuSign signature.
This is Nikki again. So this has been a popular question we've seen in the Q&A. Signatures can be provided via DocuSign if scanning and emailing the CFA or choosing to print out and mail the CFA. The electronic CFA application does not allow for DocuSign.
Thank you, Nikki. Okay.
Hi, Crystal. This is a question that I see in the Q&A. Do we need to create a login account in case we are not able to complete the application in one time and need to come back later to finish or submit the application? In other words, can we save and come back?
Nikki or Lindsay?
Yeah, I can also hop in for that one. Thank you. Yes, so this is where the save and return later feature comes in. If you are not able to, if you don't have that whole chunk of time, if you need to get additional signatures, paperwork completed, we understand. That is where you can save your progress on the electronic application and come back to it after you have completed all the necessary paperwork.
Thank you. And then I see a question here, and it asks, do we only submit a cover page for the minimum days of operation? And so I think I'm responding to this correctly, if I'm understanding your question correctly. So you submit the cover page, but you also must submit the program calendar. And if there's been any change to your minimum days of operation, you must also submit a program narrative change explaining the reason for the change to your MDO. And then I am continuing on here.
Another technical question, can we bypass the signatures and sign all documents in the end? That might be for Lindsay.
No, you have to sign. If you're doing the electronic submission through the SNAP survey, it will not allow you to proceed unless you have completed all fields. So it would require a signature before you're able to proceed. And then I see a question about where can we get the Excel file about the operation days? I believe that's on the CFA webpage. So I'll ask Mai to take a look and see if she could find that for us and post it in the chat. I see one here saying, I thought a board resolution is not needed if the CEO or president signs. So because the CFA now, when it is signed, you are essentially signing your fiscal year 23-24 contract, and this will be for every year moving forward. So it is required that there is a board resolution. So like previous years, you would complete the continued funding application. You didn't need to have a board resolution. And then when you received your contract from the CDE contracts office, that would be the time that you would have the board resolution. But since you are now essentially signing the contract, you have to have a board resolution. Okay. I thought the board resolution is only for public agencies. If we are a private nonprofit, then we do not need a board resolution. So if you have a board, you are required to have a board resolution. So that's for both public, private, and nonprofit agencies.
Here's a question we get each year. Do we need to submit separate calendars for part day and full day CSPP?
Yes, you do. So if you have both types, we need to see a calendar for each. And I have another one here about asking to repeat who the authorized agency representative would be. Again, that is either the executive director or program director that is listed in CDMIS. Okay. Okay. I would say if you have very, very specific questions related to your agency type, I'm seeing some here around being a university, and even though you have like an executive director and program director listed in CDMIS, the university doesn't allow signatories. So for questions like that, please send an email to our CFA team at cfa@cde.ca.gov.
There are two questions maybe we can answer
Great.
here. One, about the calendar. One question is about the part day, full day. Do they need to submit 2 calendars? And the other is for a program have multiple sites. Do they submit the calendar for each site?
So yes, so again, for if you have a part day and a part year, or part day, part year, and a full day, full year, we need a calendar for each of those. If you have multiple sites, typically your part day is going to be operating the same number of days as at each site, and your full day is going to be operating the same number of days at each site. So you would just submit the 2 calendars. And then if you have, I did see something here about subcontractors, they may operate different days. As long as it's the same number of days, we'll accept the calendar. Is there a board resolution form that does not read sample on top? No, we have provided a sample board resolution for you so that you know what it should look like. It doesn't have to, be exactly, but it needs to include the language that's in that sample for you. So you can just use that and type up your own.
Hi, Crystal and Lindsay. There was some confusion on the due date. Can we repeat what the due date is?
The due date is no later than 5 p.m. on December 23rd, 2022. I did see somebody asking about being able to print it out and scan and email the application. Yes, that is allowed. You can print it out and scan or sign it and scan it. And then remember, if you're going to mail a hard copy of the application into the CDE, that all signatures must be in blue ink.
And just to clarify, does everyone need to complete a board of resolution? The instructions say if applicable, and also is it new that nonprofit agencies also need to submit a board of resolution?
Okay, so when we say if applicable, what we mean is if you have a board of directors or a board. We do have some smaller programs that do not have a board, and so they would not submit a board resolution. If you do have a board, you're required to submit, whether you're public, private, nonprofit. If you have a board, you're required to include the board resolution. Can the board secretary sign the board approval resolution for signature, or does it have to be the board president? If the board secretary is authorized to sign, that is fine. So again, we have one about the calendar. If we have multiple locations with part day, part year, but they run different days depending on the district, how do we turn in one calendar for our entire CSPP contract? So if the minimum days of operation are the same, so 175 days or 180 days, we will accept the calendar regardless. If the days may not exactly line up, and there might be a day or two here where they don't operate on the same days, but as long as the MDO is the same, that's okay. If you have some of your sites operating 175 days and some operating in 180 days, then we would want to see a calendar for each of those. Okay. I see again, I think this means we can have our executive director sign this CFA. Yes, if that executive director is listed in CDMIS. Okay, so I see we have 5 minutes left. I'll see if anybody else from the CDE team has any questions that they think we should respond to. Give it a couple of more minutes, and then we will be closing out for today. And I'll just remind everybody again, if you have additional questions, we will be posting our frequently asked questions on the CFA webpage. I believe some already exist there. And if you have like very specific questions or additional questions that are not available on the CFA webpage, please email cfa@cde.ca.gov. If you have specific program related questions, so those are related to your program narrative change or your program calendar, then please reach out to your assigned Program Quality Implementation Office regional consultant. And there is a consultant directory on this CDE webpage. And Maya, if you could drop the link to that in the chat, I would appreciate it. The sample resolution letter is available on the CFA webpage. If you have difficulty finding it, go ahead and email the CFA team. If you want to add more days of operation, please, you can include that in a program narrative change with your CFA and the revised calendar that reflects those additional days for your MDO. And then once the CFA is reviewed by the CFA team, it gets sent over to your regional PQI office consultant. They review it. They may reach out to you for additional information or clarification, and then they will decide whether to approve or deny that request. Typically, it would be approved. Okay, so we're at 4:57, so I'm going to turn it back over to Lindsay to close us out. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Crystal, for taking that. So we have come to the end of our presentation on the CFA for fiscal year 23-24. Thank you all for joining us today and for all your dedication and important work on behalf of California's children and families. The webinar will be posted to the CFA webpage after the recording has uploaded. So you'll have access to this webinar and to the slides. Both will be posted to the CFA webpage. For all questions, please email cfa@cde.ca.gov. Thank you, everybody.